not just potential buyers who can have their weekends overrun by house hunting. It can be a cutthroat competitive market for Australia's renters too.
So far, I've been to about 10 apartments. It's been competitive around this area in particular. Trying to find an apartment on your own is quite difficult.
ASHLEE Emerson was evicted from her previous property after bringing home a puppy without the landlord's permission.
I definitely think that landlords are favoured over tenants, but the landlord was promised we don't have a dog, so we have gone against that. And what kind of amenities are in this apartment?
So the building's got a pool, gym, sauna.
Being evicted made me feel a little bit lost, a bit uneasy. Wasn't sure where we were going to be living. Yeah, didn't really want to do the whole process again.
1 in 4 Australians now lives in a privately rented property. Since the mid-1990s, the number of renters in Australia has risen by about 20%.
Renting in the private market has actually grown quite considerably over the last 15, 20 years.
What I think is going to happen is that we will have a growing share of the population who will have to rent over a longer period of time. So at the moment, about 25 to 30% of the population are renting, and that will likely grow in the future.
It's increasing relative to home ownership, and it's probable that it will keep increasing as long as we get low growth rates in income, which is what we've got at present. I think it's quite probable that many more Australians will be renting for the whole of their lives.
Renting has a lot of advantages, particularly for young people starting out in the workforce.
There's a high degree of flexibility when you rent. You can change the area you live in. If your work circumstances change, for example, you can even move city without the high transactional costs of buying and selling a house if you happen to own one.
While property prices have rocketed relative to incomes over the last 20 years, rental affordability has remained fairly stable.
Rents have not grown nearly as strongly as house prices.
But Australia's rental market is not a level playing field. A growing number of low-income households are renting, and in the last 2 decades, the number of those experiencing rental stress has doubled.
We're living to rent, that's all we're doing. Just living to have a house. Those sports things, we only do them because I found the appropriate places that had, if you have more than 2 children, then they cap it off. So that's why we can do it, otherwise we wouldn't be able to do it.
KRISTIE Hoskins recently moved from Darwin to the Sydney suburb of Kellyville. With 4 young kids, she needs a big house. Rent accounts for most of the family income. And given that you're spending so much of your income on rent, how would you possibly save to buy?
Well, we can't. I mean, it's a dream, a pipe dream. It's something that we all wish for, but I can't.
And I guess you can't afford to go out much or to spend money.
One thing that I found is going to the opening of new stores, because they've always got a jumping castle or a free sausage sizzle, or kids eat free nights. That's what we do.
Renting is just about the best predictor of financial hardship in Australia today. So there's a really clear link between rates of financial stress and poverty and the fact that people are renters rather than homeowners.
Low-income earners are facing an acute and growing shortage of affordable rental properties. Research published late last year by the Australian Housing and Urban Research Institute found that 80% of the lowest income earners pay more rent than they can afford. And poorer people are increasingly being forced out of the rental market by wealthier tenants.
If you're on those relatively low incomes, it is difficult for you to find a place in a capital city.
Peter Harris is the former chairman of the Productivity Commission.
This kind of lack that I see in the market is an area where people do have an income. It's just that the price at which they would be able to provide themselves with a rental asset is going to chew up 40% or higher of their income because they're on a minimum wage or just above a minimum wage.
Another stress for Australia's burgeoning rental class is being frequently forced to move at short notice.
Renting doesn't have to be bad, but Australia, no, is not ready for it. We have a lot of laws that are around renting that favour overly the owner rather than the renter, particularly around security of tenure. Anyone who works in this space has consistently, for decades, talked about how far behind we are compared to Europe or even the US, and yet we do nothing about it.
Many more Australians will be renting for much more, or in fact their entire lives. In that world where you're bringing up kids in the home, it's much more important that you have stability, and therefore we do need to shift tenancy laws in favour of giving greater security of tenure to renters.
Well, you can help. You could get some water in the saucepan for the steam.
I can't ensure that the landlords here are not going to send me a letter tomorrow and say, we want the property vacated.
Yeah, that'll do.
6 months ago, I wouldn't have been able to have the finances to afford to actually move and the cost of that. So that's a really scary place to be when you're at someone else's whim.
You don't know when we might get kicked out for no particular reason. I mean, if we owned a place and had a mortgage, we could do stuff like fix a door so then we don't have to lock it on the inside, then walk around to the garage.
At times, Kate Reeves has struggled to meet the rent on the small unit she shares with her 13-year-old son in Parkdale, southeast of Melbourne.
We were at a point, a while ago where probably it was about 65% of the income that we had went on rent. That was really hard. We were half a pay away, Will and I, from being homeless.
In her 20s, Kate was a proud property owner, but sold up as part of a plan to purchase a family home with Will's father. When the relationship fell apart, her wealth was chewed up in legal fees.
I was proud of it, and it was very hard. And that adds to the feeling now of being embarrassed and ashamed. I think that's the thing that makes me emotional, that I feel ashamed. I feel like I blew it. And it's embarrassing to be at this point in my life and not have that.
Because you had it?
Because I did have it. I considered myself an intelligent, educated woman, who was out there doing good things, and that all fell in a heap.
We now have over a quarter of single-parent families living in housing stress. They have extremely high rates of poverty.
If you're a minimum wage earner or something between minimum and average weekly earnings, and it's you alone as a single person, accommodation costs for you are going to be more like 40%, 45% of your income, substantially into the territory which is informally called housing stress. Now, that's in good part because we're not designing and building accommodation for that end of the market.
Many more Australians who rent, of working age, experience financial stresses such as being able to heat their home, skipping meals, or not being able to pay their bills on time. In fact, working age Australians that rent and are in paid work have higher rates of financial stress than pensioners that own their own home.
Homeowners are vastly better off in retirement than renters.
Owning your own home at retirement age, not having the burden of the weekly or the monthly rent bill, is a really important part of financial security in retirement.
We have to think about housing affordability in the context of renters as well. Home ownership is really only important once you get to be retired, and then it is important because we do see higher rates of poverty amongst people who don't own their home, who are elderly. So that is when it becomes important.
I need a room. Like, I need a room with my kids. And when these kids grow up and they work hard, they can buy their own.
For 14 years now, St Mary's in Sydney's West has been home to the Akot family. Arrow Akot came here as a refugee from South Sudan in 2005.
I'm a father. I'm a single father of 7 children, 4 boys and 3 girls.
For the last 2 years, the family shared this 2-bedroom apartment.
It's really bad. This is too small for us. This is where I sleep. This is where my older brother sleeps. My dad and my older brother sleep on the floor.
It feels sad because my dad is struggling and we only live in a small unit.
Arrow's income as a cleaner at a nearby school is supplemented by the family tax benefit and Commonwealth rent assistance.
This is where I sleep here. So all these 2, 3 of us sleep down here. I put it all here. Just leave it. Okay. Yeah, we sleep down here anyway. And we put it here and then I sleep here. It's a very small area. It's so hard. So, but when when you are in a situation like this, what you can do? You can't do anything.
My dad cooks for us. He does everything for us. And he tries his hardest.
I told them, look, we are not homeless. We are better than others. Others are homeless. They sleep on the street. So I have a small room. I'm happy. And I have a job. That's all. I'm happy.
Severe crowding is classified as homelessness by the Australian Bureau of Statistics. The proportion of Australians living in severely crowded dwellings increased by more than 50% between 2001 and 2016.
One of the core components of homelessness that has risen is severe crowding, and that is a direct manifestation of not being able to access adequate affordable rentals.
So this is it?
Yeah.
But this week, after months of searching, the overcrowding is finally over for Arrow and his family. So this is a bit bigger?
Yes, it's bigger, so I'm happy with my kids here. 4 bedroom is enough for us.
Yeah, and you won't be sleeping on the floor here?
No more floor anymore.
With financial help from his oldest son, they're now able to rent a house in the same suburb that's big enough for all of them.
Yeah, this one is my room. This is the boy room.
So this is the kitchen?
Yeah, this is the kitchen.
Arrow's only hope of ever buying a home rests on his kids' success.
I can't afford to buy a house until these children grow up. And when they grow up, 4 or 3 of them are working, then we can join together and we can buy a house. We can buy a house, but for me now, I can't afford it.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.